The Swedish Chemical Tax. Do it again and do it right. This was the title of a presentation in front of many stakeholders on September 17th, 2019 in Stockholm. It was about the Swedish Chemical Tax, which taxes electronic items and electrical goods based on the chemicals they contain, mainly flame retardants. So taxable products are dishwashers, freezers, refrigerators, washing machines, DVD players, electronics, headphones, CD players, radios, and so on. The maximum tax rate can reach up to 440 Swedish kronor per product and is based on product weight, as well as the flame retardants used inside. There are deductions possible, so 50% deduction if no additive chlorinated or brominated substances are used, 90% reduction if no additive or reactive chlorinated or brominated substances, and no additive phosphorus-based flame retardants are used. There is no zero tax alternative. A minimum tax of 10% has to be paid always. Henrik Edin showed this in a nice example of a computer monitor that was displayed in the meeting, where he showed the difference between the price to be paid including the tax from a local shop versus buying over the internet from neighboring countries where you don't have to pay any extra tax. In his example, you pay 1,600 Swedish krona if you buy over the internet versus 2,150 krona if you buy in a shop in Sweden. In a previous stakeholder meeting, we had asked the question, do you think that the tax has been designed so that it will stimulate producers to select safer chemicals? And the striking answer was that 14 respondents answered with no. So why is the goal not met? The wrong chemical properties are taxed. The tax is based on the content of chlorinated, brominated or phosphorus-based flame retardants, but simply separated into additive or reactive or polymeric groups. There are, however, also very good additive flame retardants based on phosphorus, for instance. As a consequence, this leads to false substitution and the risk to create an incentive for the taxable product manufacturer to select flame retardants that qualify for maximum tax reduction instead of selecting really safer alternatives. In addition, it is not possible to check for compliance as standard test methods are not available. So this creates some legal uncertainty and cheaters may benefit. Many stakeholders have voiced concerns against the Swedish tax on electronics. For instance, these 7 Swedish affected industry associations have jointly stated that Sweden, instead of introducing a tax, should work for a ban of certain chemicals within the European Union and change the REACH and ROS directives. However, if the tax stays, they say, taxation of flame retardants containing bromine and chlorine can be accepted. The Phosphorus, Inorganic and Nitrogen Flame Retardants Association states that the Swedish tax fails to distinguish flame retardants according to their environmental and health profile and poses many unclear questions for implementation. 100% tax exemption should apply where recognized safer flame retardants are used. The Swedish certification body TCO Certified states that the chemical tax on electronics misses its goal. It does not reduce hazardous substances. And they support the taxation of all brominated and chlorinated flame retardants, but phosphorus-based flame retardants must be assessed individually, which requires an agreed assessment methodology to avoid false substitution. The Swedish environmental group Chemsec also states that taxing all phosphorus-based flame retardants is problematic. Instead, these should be assessed in groups or individually. The proposed approach will not adequately incentivize the phasing out of the most problematic substances, they say. And lastly, already in 2013, the Swedish Chemicals Agency Kemi recommended that the inherent individual substance chemical hazard properties should be taxed, and tax substances must be possible to measure and control, and e-commerce must be covered. Unfortunately, none of these Kemi recommendations were implemented in the chemical tax for electric and electronic products. What should be done to get it right? We urged the Swedish government to immediately initiate a revision of the tax regulation. Firstly, Kemi or the Swedish EPA should be tasked with checking the effectiveness of the current tax. The basis for taxation should be the individual substance intrinsic hazardous properties and risk. Secondly, a chemical expert group should be established with representatives from, for example, Kemi, Chemsec, TCO Development, the Swedish Centre for Chemical Substitution and Industry. Responsibility of the expert group should be to review potential flame retardants assessment schemes, replace the current annex to the law with a list of substances supported by independent assessment reports, and identify standard test methods for the taxable substances to enable compliance checking. Thirdly, the scope of the law should be revised in view of which elements in flame retardants are covered, whether it's bromine, chlorine, phosphorus or possibly others. And lastly, to maximize the industry substitution incentive, a zero tax alternative should also be considered. There was a general consensus in the group that the overall goal of the tax law to reduce the supply of hazardous chemicals in people's homes, environment, and at the same time stimulate companies to select safer chemicals is currently not met. Hans, what do you think of the Swedish tax on electronics?
I think it should be modified as soon as possible.
Thanks.